So if you follow this channel, you very likely follow, I would say, the fitness community in general. I would expect, most of the people that follow this channel, and you're well aware of the things that are happening. This past year, there's been so many deaths that are shaking the industry. Just lots of surprises, man. There's been weeks where multiple bodybuilders or, previously pro bodybuilders have passed. What I don't believe in is addressing anybody that's passed in an isolated manner. I believe in respecting the dead. So never would I bring up, a certain person that's passed and, go into depth about things like bigorexia. But I want to talk about bigorexia in general because a lot of these deaths are from bigorexia. And it's one of those topics where if somebody brings it up and they say, I'm not shocked that so-and-so passed because, they were well into their 40s or 50s and they were still on heavy gear cycles. It just wasn't a shock to me. That person gets fucking crucified. And we're kind of in this weird area now where if you bring up the death of a bodybuilder, even if it's not in a disrespectful manner, and you just bring up the fact that, they were in their 40s and 50s and they were still juicing heavily, getting on stage. And we're not just talking about a lot of gear. We're talking about diuretics. We're talking about crushing estrogen to zero, which is awful for your cholesterol. We're talking about running multiple stimulants like clenbuterol, thyroid medication like T3, and a lot of people will take it even further and run, D&P, and they're on this cocktail of stimulants, diuretics, heavy cycles of gear to get on stage and compete. And on top of that, their body weight is so low that they are, a couple months of dieting away from death. And these people pass in the midst of doing all of this, or, say 10 years later after they stopped. I think it's so bizarre that people get on camera and they're like, man, I'm just so shocked and I'm taken by surprise. And I mean, there's this weird double standard where if you drink yourself to death, or, you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, or, your thing is popping pills, whatever it may be, that person gets completely disrespected when they die. Oh, that person was an alcoholic. That's why he died. And they're remembered as an alcoholic. Oh, that person, they couldn't stop smoking cigarettes, so they had a heart attack. Oh, okay. Those are the conversations that people have. But when it comes to guys with bigorexia that cannot stop trying the pursuit of getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is extremely lethal, especially getting into your later ages, there is this massive double standard where it's like you can't talk about it. And I think that's a problem. I think we need to talk about it. Because, you have guys that are pissing blood, shitting blood on cycle, blood pressure through the roof, 190 over 130, 200 over 140, and they're staying on cycle. Is that not suicidal? If that's not suicidal, I don't know what is. And when you're at a point where you're ready to die, you're literally ready to die. Because anybody that is shitting blood, pissing blood, having blood pressure through the roof like that and staying on cycle, there's no argument against the fact that they're ready to die. And it's literally in the pursuit of not being big enough. That's it. And there's no argument for it. You guys know that I'm not anti-gear. My stance on gear is very similar to Derek from More Plates, More Dates. It's like there's ways to minimize the risk, but there's always going to be a risk. And the best way to do it, again, is to minimize the risk. But, when you're inherently doing something that is killing you, and deep down inside, like, this is very dangerous to do, I could die at any second, you got to figure out why. Why are you okay with dying? And from a common sense perspective, most people know that there's something underlying there. There's an underlying reason for why somebody is ready to die. And I'm not just talking about bodybuilders. Let's go back to the drinker, the smoker, the drinker that drinks a fifth a day. He knows that he's at high risk of dying, but he does it anyways. And I would say, my parents' generation, so anybody that's in their 40s and above, my grandparents' generation, mental health was not a thing at all. People didn't talk about it. People didn't even know what it was. And when somebody drank themselves to death, it stopped there. Like they were an alcoholic, they drank themselves to death. But now with mental health awareness, with people learning about mental disorders, we're able to realize now, like, somebody that's okay with dying has underlying shit that they're dealing with. It's not as simple as they were an alcoholic and they died. It's something internally that was never resolved, manifested itself into alcoholism to numb whatever they were going through mentally because they never got the help that they needed. They never worked through, what they were holding inside. And so they decided to commit suicide slowly by drinking, drugging, and in the case of bodybuilding, there is a way to do it that's very suicidal, And we all know that there's different levels to this shit, right? There's the guys that openly run gear year round. Like there's no stopping ever. And I don't mean blasting and cruising. That's the smartest way to do it. And no, I don't mean 400 milligrams of test on a cruise. That's a cycle. Even 200 milligrams a week is more than HRT for 99% of people. But you have the guys that openly just do a cycle and then they switch to another cycle and they switch to another cycle and they stay on gear year round. That's very popular even in the powerlifting world now. There's a lot of powerlifters coming out saying, like, these guys are on heavy cycles year round. So it's not just the bodybuilders. And then there's the bodybuilders doing it. If that is your passion to be a top competitor and everybody else around you is doing it, sadly, you're going to have to end up doing it. And when you choose to go down that route, you are choosing to take your life. And there are people that make the argument of, well, that's their passion. Let them die doing what they love to do. But it's like, okay, you can bodybuild. You can take things to the next level with PEDs. That's one thing. But doing it in a manner that you're going to die, that's sick. And there's no justification for it. There's zero. Anybody that, again, runs heavy cycles year round, or they call 400 mgs a test a week a cruise, so that person is essentially juicing year round too, they're ready to die. All for what? All for what? To be big? It's not a passion, man. It's not a passion. It's a sickness. And people need to wake up and stop sticking up for this mentality. I've had many people come on this channel and rage because I've talked about similar topics before. Of course, if somebody's doing it, they're going to be very fucking angry, with a video like this. But the people that are justifying it, saying like, let them just do their passion. Again, guys, I know what a passion is. I'm not a bodybuilder, but I train hard. I've ran PEDs. I'm going to run PEDs, but I'm not doing it in a suicidal manner. I understand the risks that I'm taking. I'm not saying that, just because I do it the smart way, the healthiest way possible, that I'm not taking a risk. I understand that. But if I said, you know what, there's never such thing as too big or too strong, I am going to run cycles year round for the next 10 years. I'm signing my death certificate. You understand? I'm signing my death certificate either now or in the future. Is that a passion or a sickness? And that's almost a rhetorical question, because if you're saying it's a passion, it's bullshit. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to live their lives, but we have to understand more the mental disorder of bigorexia. Okay, we fucking go hard on people that are anorexic, that are never skinny enough. We put them in mental institutions. We shame them. We call them crazy. We call them mentally sick. But somebody that is running insane amounts of gear year-round and signing their death certificate because they're never big enough, we just don't talk about it. I've seen interviews of guys talking about running tren year-round, running 1,000 milligrams of tren a week, you know, with 6-7 grams of gear on top of it, and peptides and 10 IUs of GH and all this stuff. And it's like the interviewer's just laughing like, oh, that's crazy. But if anybody ever got on an interview and they're like, yeah, man, I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day, or I'm really into, you know, sprinting, so I pop, you know, 200 milligrams of Adderall before I go out and sprint, everybody's going to look at them like they're crazy. Bro, you could die. But in the bodybuilding world, it never gets talked about. It gets swept under the rug. And then when somebody dies, everybody's shocked. And I'm like, why the fuck are people shocked? This poor guy had an issue that he was dealing with, and he couldn't live with himself. That's the reality of it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That is the reality. He couldn't live with himself. And so he chose to go out like that. It's not about passion. You know, there's people that are involved in very risky sports, like dirt biking, for an example. The person that goes and jumps dirt bike hills and he competitively races, is he doing something dangerous? Yes, but every time he starts his dirt bike, he's not killing himself. We're not knocking years off his life every time he starts up his dirt bike. He has a small % chance that he could die, just like, you know, getting in your car and going to the store. You could die doing that. But he's not self-inducing his death. He's just doing something that is a true passion, and it's dangerous. And he could die, but he's not inducing a suicide every time he pulls that bike out of the garage. You guys see what I'm saying? So anybody dealing with bigorexia and they're to the point where they just can't stop juicing, regardless of having high blood pressure, regardless of, you know, cholesterol being off the charts, regardless of the doctor saying, bro, you're gonna die, you have to get help. You have to figure out why you can't live with yourself. Being big is great. Being strong is great. But when it's going to cause your death, and you know that, but you can't stop, we have to talk about this stuff, guys. We have to get it out there. We have to stop acting so shocked when somebody that has this issue passes. And, you know, when it came to John Meadows, this person I'm not very fond of, but Vegan Gains, you know, I would say the first thing that he came out and said was disrespectful, but it wasn't like off the charts crazy from what I'm remembering. I don't remember everything that he said, but he said something along the lines of, you know, he's basically in his 40s, he's competing, he probably has sleep apnea, so it's not a huge surprise. If he had stopped there, I would say, you know, I wouldn't personally dissect why somebody died and put it out there. It's just let the guy rest in peace. But just from that alone, he got fucking crucified. And anybody else that self-induced their death outside of bodybuilding, that dead person would be getting fucking roasted in the comments, along with the YouTuber that brought it up. How could he do that? He had all the money in the world and fame, and, you know, he overdosed. That dumb fuck overdosed. You see it all the time. But it's like, if somebody else self-induces their death through PEDs, you better not say a fucking word or you're getting canceled. Now, Vegan Gains went on later to, you know, crucify John's kid for hunting, and that's all that psychotic vegan shit. You guys know how I feel about that. But the initial thing that he said, I'm like, yeah, dude, you're coming off disrespectful, but, you know, I don't get this double standard. And I think that it's got to stop, and we got to talk about this stuff more openly. Please hit the subscribe button, go to the Instagram page, follow it, and I'll see you guys next time.